Hello everyone, my name is Jean-Michael Bushman and welcome back to Magic the Gathering. And this time, it's for their latest set, well, upcoming set by this point. All of the previews are now out and that means all of the comments are now revealed, which means, for me, I will be reviewing all of the comments, well, quote-unquote reviewing. I'll just be looking over the set and see if they will even impact the Pauper format or not. And from the humdrum that I've been hearing and all of the hullabaloo that concerns it, Bloomburrow is poised to probably not do as much as Modern Horizons 3 did. I took a quick look at the current state of the Pauper metagame, and there are 5 decks that each occupy about roughly the same slice of the pie. All of them like 10 to 12% of the metagame each time. And 2 of them are flavors of burn for some weird reason. And one of them is a combo deck, and then the others are like either control decks or mid-range decks, which is insane what MH3 did to the Pauper format. But at the very least, we got one hell of a shake-up with Modern Horizons 3. They brought a lot, and I mean it brought a lot of amazing new toys for the Pauper format, and basically pushing some decks down and unfortunately powering up the already pre-existing ones. But here we are with the latest set, Bloomburrow, the set that introduces, well, what I would call the critter umbrella of creature types in Magic the Gathering. And honestly, I am personally excited for this set, as are very likely a lot of partners of Magic the Gathering players who do not even play the game, but their partners very much do. And this will be the perfect set for them to get into, because look at all these cute little guys. I mean, who could resist these guys? And me personally, and I don't know if even enough people will get what I'm going to talk about right now, this set reminds me a lot of an old series of comic books that I read back in the day called Mouse Guard. I'll put them up on screen right about here, and you'll see why. I don't know if they took inspiration from this comic book series by David Peterson, but I loved reading these as a kid. I think I was maybe nearly becoming a teenager by this point, but I just picked it up from a book fair out of sheer curiosity, and my god, I was hooked immediately to the series. I burned through all of the copies that I had at the time, and I literally scoured the city where the book fair was at, because it was near a bookstore that also sold Mouse Guard way back when. Nowadays, I no longer know where I kept the copies of those comics, but they do it. The paperbacks do exist online, and I would love to get my hands on those now that I'm an earning adult. But for now, we're going to focus on Bloomburrow, and I have a sort of personal bias with this set because I love Mouse Guard. I loved Mouse Guard a lot when growing up, and we're gonna see if there will be changes to the proper format with this set. Starting off, we only have 93 cards to go through, so not a lot. But starting off, Banishing Light, always good to see this. I mean, it's Banishing Light. What else? What else do you want me to say? It'd probably be good in draft, but sadly not much else. Same with Bravekin Duo. It's Rabbit Mouse because there's a rabbit and a mouse on the art. Did you bring everything you need for the journey? The rabbit asked. Of course I did. I brought you, my dear Pinecone. How fucking dare you? Oh my god. That is that's quite the sense of humor from the mouse right there. But of note, mice and rats are 2 completely distinct creature types in this set. But everyone else gets their time in the spotlight, which means that a lot of people love to differentiate mice and rats. The rats are more the evil quote unquote ones, while the mice are the nice ones. But going over what Bravekin Duo does, probably more for limited. But Carrot Cake in particular, now there's a card that has some people excited for it because it's another one of those artifacts that does something on entry, but it's in colors that are not usually in colors that you would expect an artifact to be in. It's in white, But then again, Boro synthesizer is already a thing, and it has gotten huge improvements over time, and it will only keep getting better. This is probably more for the ones that can support Glinthawk, because it can, bounce this thing back to hand and replay it every time, and it still has the same food ability where, you pay 2 mana, sacrifice it, and you gain 3 life. It's a carrot cake. I mean, there are people who like carrot cakes, but this one takes carrot cake a little too literally. But me personally, I do not like carrot cakes. I don't know why. I mean, I have tasted carrot cakes in the past, but it's honestly not my cup of tea. Then our next card, Come and Get It. Reading the ability right now, it's another one of those feather cards, and then if you have Zada in the party, you know how it goes. It's the obligatory white battle trick. I mean, what else can you expect? But it does introduce one hell of a new mechanic here in Bloomburrow, which is gifting. There's certain cards in this set have a gift mechanic where you would give your opponent a certain thing as the spell resolves. So you can't exactly counter the gift ability unless you can, I believe. Because it's not exactly. I believe gifting is an ability of the spell, so I'm not too sure if you can interact with that on the stack. Because stifle effects are become well, they're not exactly commonplace, but they're becoming more and more frequent as the years go on with this game. But as for the overall package of this card, giving your opponent a food token while your creature gets indestructible and +2/+2. Yeah, definitely a blowout for draft, but in constructed, unfortunately, there are better options. Then going for Intrepid Rabbit, which introduces another new mechanic for Bloomburrow, which is Offspring, where for paying one more generic mana, you can create a 1/1 token copy of the creature. So for 3 mana, you get a 3/2 and a 1/1. Well, 4 mana rather. And then when it enters, target you get +1/+1. So you get a 2/2. This is actually pretty goddamn good, honestly. If you can even get to that much mana, this will probably be really good in limited. I'm not too sure if it will see slots in the decks that can support it. Mono White is an existing archetype right now, but they're focused more on artifacts rather than creatures. So I'm not too sure if this will slot into those same decks. Up next, we have Life Creed Duo, a 2 mana flying bat bird. Okay, so another one of those animal pairs. Whenever another creature you control enters, you gain a life. I mean, yeah, another creature for the Soul Sisters archetype. And this time it has a slightly bigger bet at 2, so it will survive a lot of the one damage stuff that the format is very, very known for now. But it won't survive a lot of the other stuff. Breath Weapon and Fiery Cannonade are like commonly used board wipes in the format now. Hell, even the black one from Theros that was downshifted, where it gives all creatures -2/-2, but it does cost 3 mana. So yeah, you need more premium board wipes for Life Creed Duo compared to stuff like Electricity or End the Festivities. But it's still something to consider. But I'm not quite sure if we'll even have the slots. Up next, we have Nettleguard. This one has another one of the newer mechanics for the set, which is Valiant. So if it becomes the target of a spell or ability for the first time that turn, it will get +0/+2. And then you can pay 1, sacrifice it, destroy target artifact or enchantment. It's basically a white version of Thrashing Brontodon. Like, ignoring the first sentence altogether, it's just Thrashing Brontodon at common. As if we didn't already have that. But yeah, I mean, it's something, but I'm not quite sure if we even need more effects like this for Pauper, or if we even need it at all. Artifact hate is far more important in Pauper than enchantment hate, because artifacts are far more plentiful in the Pauper format compared to enchantments, because only a very small handful of decks really ever use enchantments, at least in the top of the metagame right now. Bogles, however you pronounce it. I prefer Bogles because you boggle the mind and you bogle it, and then the bogle is the creature. Keep that in mind for your pronunciation guides. But for back to Guard, probably sideboard double, but I'm not too keen on it. Unlike Pileated Provisioner, which already you lost me at 5 mana 3/4, and then when it enters, you put a +1/+1 counter on a creature without flying. Great art, by the way. Aerial supporters trained for years to make sure the weapons they drop land in the hands of mice and not on their heads, and preferably not with the sharp end. Yeah. I mean, it's flavorful, art's real nice. One thing I really liked about the Bloomburrow previews is all of the art is honestly just really, really nice. And again, going back to Mouse Guard, that's literally all what the art reminds me of. Although Mouse Guard, there is a stark difference. Mouse Guard is a lot darker, and there are people who have said that Bloomburrow basically took the place, well, supposedly took the place of what our revisit to Lorwyn should have been. But Lorwyn will probably be somewhere further down the line. Assuming, of course, they fix the issues of extremely rampant racism in that set. Because, good God, if you go back to how Lorwyn told its stories way back when, you're going to see that the elves are extremely, extremely racist over there. Especially against, well, everyone. Oh my God. But Bloomburrow is honestly a breath of fresh air. So there's that at the very least. Moving along, we have Rabbit Response, a 4-mana instant where it's a combat trick. And then if you control a rabbit, you get Scry 2. You never fight just one rabbit foe. They bring the strength of their burrow to battle with them. So it's just, we get gang warfare up in this hood, y'all. Probably this is definitely a limited finisher. Because +2/+1 is a big boost. You can use this to finish off your opponent in case, either you're ahead or just a way to push some damage through. But otherwise, in Constructed, definitely no. Up next, we have Sonar Strike, where the obligatory white damage-based damage spell. And then you gain 3 life if you control a bat. Not really constructed, all limited formats. There we go. I tripped up on my words so much because it's raining so goddamn hard right now. Sonar Strike, although this does have the upside of dealing damage to a blocking creature, so it removes the blocker from combat entirely, thus making you be able to push your damage through. So this is probably a strict upgrade over all of the other spells of the same type that we've gotten over the years, because it also targets blocking creatures. So there is that. And then there's just minor upside if you control a bat, but I don't think you really care about that. 4 damage is huge, especially in the Pauper format. And then especially in Limited, where a lot of the creatures are... especially a lot of the creatures that are lower on the curve, they tend to have smaller butts, and Sonar Strike might just cause more blowouts than one might expect. Up next, we have Thistledown Players, where whenever it attacks, you untap target non-land permanent. 3 mana 3/3 is on curve, and stat-wise, it's not bad, but it has to be able to attack in order to untap a non-land permanent. There are probably some shenanigans you can do with it during combat. This is probably more support for the rat tribal archetype in the draft environment. Yes, I know that there's a rare rat. I believe her name is Mabel. And she's a Boros legendary creature where she has payoffs for doing attacky things, typical boring Boros stuff, unfortunately. So this might help in that deck as a way to boost it. Basically giving your creatures pseudo vigilance, but there are other stuff. It does say non-land permanent, so if you have mana producing sources that aren't lands, you can untap those. So keep this in mind. Not for 1v1, but more for commander. Up next, we have Warren Elder, a 2-mana 2/2, so a grizzly bear, or in this case, a grizzly rabbit, where it has a mana sink where creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn. So this is likely more to be thought of as a finisher for Limited, where sometimes you get into stalled board states and then you don't have anything else to do with your mana. Your draws have been bad, so you can just use this to basically just pump your whole board and then just swing in Keep swinging until somebody dies. Keep it in mind, more for limited, but for constructed, probably no. Our last white card, Wax Wayne Witness, 4 mana 2/4. Whenever you gain or lose life during your turn, it gets +1/+0. So it's whatever you gain, or lose even. I'm not quite sure if losing life also counts, just taking combat damage, but I guess that counts as losing life. But we're gonna see. Batfolk Cleric consider the cycle of light and darkness as a sacred allegory of life and death. So it's literally a parallel to Lorwyn. Great. So it really is. It's giving credence to all of those conspiracy theorists out there. But we're gonna move on to Bellowing Crier. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, discard a card. There is a legendary creature, which is a frog that cares about creatures entering and leaving the battlefield, I believe. Basically, some people have called that legendary creature Discount Tulane, where it cares about a lot, because it cares a lot about creatures entering and leaving the battlefield, and then you draw cards as you do your thing. So this guy could end up in that deck, because it has a really good enter the battlefield ability, and it's a 2/1, so it has decent stats on top of it. So yeah, keep an eye out for this guy, but we shall see. Up next, we have Dazzling Denial on a hummingbird right there. Maintaining brilliant plumage isn't just a statement, it's a tactic, and it's going against a crap. What the fuck? Oh my god, this is amazing art still, but damn. Counter that spell is controller pays 2. Then if you control a bird, counter that spell unless you pay, and then it just tax on 4 more mana. So if somebody uses Swan Song on your spell in the next Commander Night, and then you have a bird, hey, guess what? This is now pay 2 mana. Hey, I will counter that spell unless you pay 4, because you so graciously gave me a bird to make this counter spell even better. Hell yeah. But otherwise, the floor is decent for 1v1, but the ceiling is absurd if you do indeed get to that level. Up next, we have Dire Downdraft, which is a 4 mana instant. Costs 1 less to cast if it targets an attacking or tapped creature, and it just Fate Seals them. It's decent removal for limited. Basically, facing your opponent in limited is quite the death sentence. Because you could just have another card apart from the one that was just returned to the top of your deck. So this is gonna hurt a lot in limited, but for constructed, probably not, sadly. Poor bird though. Quick Wings Elite Flyers were more than capable of navigating ordinary storms, but Dragonhawk Storms were anything but ordinary. So this is in reference to the overall arc within Bloomburrow, where there are 2 macro groups of creatures in this deck. First, which is, well, what I've said earlier, are the critters, which is bats, frogs, mice, rats. I believe even otters are included. Yeah, there's rats, and then there's otters, yes. And then the bigger creatures, which they call calamity beasts. They're all elementals, and they are basically the predators of Bloomburrow. Again, parallels to Lorwyn notwithstanding, the Dragonhawk is one of those calamity beasts. And yeah, this guy, he's not going to live to fight another day, sadly. Up next, we have Finch Formation, another creature, a 3-mana creature with Offering. When it enters the battlefield, target creature you control gains flying until end of turn. Now, in case you didn't already notice, it no longer says enter the battlefield, it just says enters. So I believe they did that in order to fit more text into their text boxes, and if they wanted to have more, let's say, flavor text, they could do it now, because enter the battlefield is no longer a thing. It just says enters. So I believe you just need to tell the newer players, hey, when it says enters, that means it has to enter the battlefield. So the spell has to resolve, and then the creature will finally enter the battlefield and say, hey, I have a trigger when I enter the battlefield. As for the Offspring, you can give 2 creatures flying until end of turn and push in for damage, but otherwise, for constructed, probably not. Up next, we have Light Shell Duo, which is a rat otter with prowess, and then when it enters, Surveil 2. Hey, lightning assails 1, cried the rat. It's so beautiful, the otter gasped in awe. Surveil 2 on a 4-mana body? A bit much. Heck, even with the prowess, it's not going to help, sadly. Pass on this one. Up next, we have Mind Spiral, a 5-mana sorcery where you gift a tapped fish. Target player draws 3 cards. If the gift was promised, you tap a creature an opponent controls and put a stand counter on it. No, 5 manas, it's too much. Even by giving your opponent a fish, no, this is just pass on this one. Unlike Night Horror Hermit, I hope I pronounced that one right. Where it has Vigilance and it's a 1/4, but it has Threshold, where it gets +2/+0 and cannot be blocked. Huh. So this is something for the Dimir Terror decks when they love and they fill up their graveyards very very quickly in that deck. But unfortunately, as I'm checking the MTG Goldfish like just the front page of the Pauper metagame right now, Dimir Terror has fallen pretty goddamn far. Seems it can no longer keep up with the threats that Modern Horizons 3 has dished out to us. But it'll probably adjust over time. We're gonna see. Keep an eye out for Nightfall Hermit. If it doesn't see play in Pauper, probably some constructed formats somewhere because it's a little too good for me at least. But then again, there are like better options out there and far more efficient than whatever this Rat Rogue is going to offer. Up next, we have Pearl of Wisdom, a sorcery, what costs 1 less to cast if you control another. The 2 mana, draw 2. Yeah, sorcery speed. I mean, why not? There are probably better card draw spells out there that don't have such an egregious downside. I mean, otherwise it's just divination. You might as well just pass on this one unless you're like an Otter tribal. Unless of course you're more insane like some of the people I play with, where they have tribal and they have a lot of changelings on board or effects that turn other creatures into other creature types. So Pearl of Wisdom is just a straight up draw 2 mana draw 2 for them. Up next we have Runaway Together, well, it's not exactly a powerful card, but it's the if the art doesn't take your breath away, it's just amazing. Nobody bothered to look for Lebo and Pola because everyone knew they didn't want to be found. Yes, they did run away together, forbidden love and all that. But yeah, the art is honestly really really cute and sweet. So if for nothing else, you're gonna get this card for that, where we finally get a lot more wholesome art than the other iterations of. Well, then again, all of the art used in Runaway Together has always been wholesome, but this one is just straight up more heartwarming than the rest of them. So take that on what you will. But up next here, Shore Up finally getting another reprint. A lot of people were looking for this card in a lot of circles, like may it be in Commander or more budget-minded decks, or hell, even the janky ones. Shore Up is one hell of a card because +1/+1 hexproof, and then you untap it. So giving it pseudo vigilance is always amazing. Or if you have some combos in your blue X deck, this is definitely a card to look out for. But otherwise, Runaway Together and Shore Up will probably see more play in actual constructed. But space is pretty tight for the decks that would want it. So I'm not even sure if it would be that. But at the very least, this is a reprint more for the Commander crowd. Up next, we have Sky Skipper Duo, a 5-mana bird frog. So we're getting a lot of these tag teams. I believe it's 2 per color. Yeah, we have Light Shell Duo, we have Sky Skipper Duo, and I believe there's one here, Life Creed, and then Brave Kid. So there are 2 duos per color, which is interesting. But going back to Sky Skipper, when it enters, exile up to 1 other creature, and then return it. Okay, so it's a blinker at 5 mana though, so a bit expensive. Probably not. You could do better with 5 mana, unfortunately, in the Pauper format. But unless, of course, you can heavily discount it or you can heavily ramp into it. But the ramp decks in Pauper right now are either walls, well, not really walls combo, but that deck does indeed generate a whole lot of mana. But Gruul ramp, well, I mean, call it for what it actually is, which is just Gruul land destruction. They either destroy their own lands or they destroy your lands, and then they're the ones who benefit from all of it. But otherwise, probably more for the budget-minded Commander crowd, but otherwise, just skip on this one. Up next, we have Thought Shocker, 2 mana, 1/3 with Threshold. Then, if you only have 7 or more cards in graveyard, for 2 mana, you can put a +1/+1 counter on it, and then you draw a card. It does need a lot of setup in order for it to become far better than what you see here, unfortunately. So you might as well just pass on this one because this just needs a little too much in order for it to truly work. Up next, we have Water Spout Warden, a 3 mana 3/2. Whenever it attacks, if another creature enters the battlefield under your control this turn, this frog gains flying. So it needs a little bit of setup, needs a little bit of help in order for it to become a lot better. But 3 mana 3/2, definitely good for the limited environment because, 3 power is something at least. But 2 toughness will probably exchange blows with a lot of other creatures most of the time. So something more to keep in mind rather than rather than think of it as a staple. Up next, we have Agate Blade Assassin, a 2 mana 1/3. When it attacks, defending player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. More for that bat we got earlier, so this will get slightly bigger if you decide to make Orzhov a thing. And I believe a lot of the legendary creatures, a lot of the legendary creatures in this set are 2 colors. So it's going to be very easy to pair this up with the bats very, very well. For limited, yes, definitely go with the bat deck. I believe the bats are mostly in Orzhov, and then there are also a couple of rats in there. Didn't think lizards were in this set, but here we are. Definitely something to keep in mind. The 3 toughness is going to stonewall a lot of the early offense your opponent might have, and of course, it will die to removal eventually, but at least you let her, I hope it's a her, absorb a lot of damage in the meantime. Up next, we have Bonebind Orator, which is a 2 mana 2/2, a Squirrel Warlock Bard, so somebody's been multi-classing. Exile it from the graveyard, return another creature from your graveyard to your hand, so you can just mill this over, and then for 4 mana, you just Grave Digger someone back into your hand, but you have to exile it from your graveyard, so there is that. Otherwise, it's a 2 mana 2/2. I mean, this is more for the grindy games in the limited environment. I'm not quite sure how grindy the limited environment for this is going to be, given that a lot of the creatures are really small. And so I'm expecting a lot of combat for the limited environment. So we'll see how good this guy really is in limited. But for constructed, probably not. Up next, we have Daggerfang Duo, the first of 2 duos for black. When enters, mill 2. I mean, yeah, 3 mana 3/2 with Death Touch. So Death Touch is always a nightmare to deal with in limited, because this makes your attacks really, really awkward. Times when you want to swing in for game and then you have your opponent has a Death Toucher, you're gonna have to think twice because you might just lose your bomb over a small 1/1 with Death Touch. So it's always a feel bad whenever that happens. But so this is definitely a decent pick for limited, but for constructed, unfortunately no. There are 2 mana creatures that does what the duo does, and unfortunately they're not gonna be seeing too much play. Should we act now or later? The rat asked. Both, whispered the squirrel. And they're gonna die. Well, I mean, not until, of course, they're gonna take down their attacker with them, of course. Up next, we have Dire Sight, Surveil 2, Draw 2, Lose 2. Hey! So this is definitely more for the graveyard-centered strategies, and there's a fine line between predicting the future and causing it. Surveil 2 is definitely a lot better than Scrying. Black has been getting a lot of these Draw 2, Lose 2 effects lately, and I love WotC for it. And especially when they tack on other effects onto said cards, like say Rowan's Grim Search, where it has Bargain, and you can make it do other things on top of it making you draw 2 cards and losing 2 life, and it's also instant speed. And I personally have a loving relationship with that kind of effect. Or, I think the better term would be parasocial. I have a very parasocial relationship with instant speed, 3 mana, draw 2, lose 2. But Dire Sight at sorcery speed, yeah. I mean, it's more to set up your graveyard for commander, especially if you're budget-minded. This is a really good card for those kinds of strategies, but for constructed, you unfortunately have to do a lot better than this, because a lot of the really good card draw spells in Pauper only cost like 1 or 2 mana at the very most. And then, of course, there's Thoughtcast, but that card can discount itself anyway, so that guy does not count. Up next, we have Early Winter, a 5 mana instant where you either exile a target creature or target opponent exiles an enchantment they control. This is probably a sideboard card for limited, because 5 mana is a bit much for constructed, and there are way easier ways to deal with these kinds of effects in Pauper format, right? In the Pauper format. Pass on this one. Up next, we have Glad Dive Duo, a 5 mana 3. So the second duo, when it enters, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So this is highly likely just reach for games where it's stalled so bad that nobody can profitably attack anymore, and this guy, just make him enter and leave the battlefield a couple of times, and your opponent will eventually die from all of the life loss. So something to keep in mind for those really, really grindy games in limited, but for constructed, probably not. Up next, we have Nocturnal Hunger, an instant where you gift a food to your opponent, and what happens? Well, you destroy target creature. If the gift wasn't promised, you lose 2 life. I mean, why would you gift your opponent? It's just destroyed. It's straight up Doomblade. Like, why else would you do that? And speaking of Doomblade, Doomblade has finally been power crept, because there's an uncommon in this set that is 2 mana. It's a 2 mana sorcery, but it just says destroy target creature. That's it. Doomblade has finally been power crept, but it's at uncommon. And a lot of my friends who play Pauper, they were freaking out and saying, has cast down finally been power crept out of environment? And then we saw the rarity, it was uncommon, and thank God it was, because if it were common, that card would have probably jumped up to like $3 or $4 if it were common. Like, Jesus Christ. Up next, we have Psychic Quarrel. Quarrel! Oh my god. I haven't even watched Walking Dead, and I already know the memes that surround that phrase. But target opponent discard 2 cards if control that, surveil 2. Payoff for Rat Tribal in the limited environment. But ouch, I hit something with my foot. I'm not gonna mind that one for now. It wasn't painful anyway. It's something, but target opponent, mind rot style effects need to do more than this these days, unfortunately. So just pass on this one. Up next, we have Ravine Raider, a 1 mana 1/1 with Menace. So this is one hell of an attacker in the early game, because it will highly likely get in for just 1 measly point of damage before it's blocked and just dies. But you at least got in for 1 point of damage. So there's that. And the path to the Cliff of Heroes is rife with bandits, expertly camouflaged in the dense flora of Valley. Yes, it has menace. So, I mean, it's a lizard. What else were you gonna expect? Where else are you gonna expect it to hide? Underneath the roots? Heck no, that's where the moles are. Let's just move right along to Saber, which is target creature gets -2/-2 on the ability and create a food token. Edibility is in the eye of the beholder. So that guy just died, didn't he? Oh dear God. I mean, its removal, -2/-2 gets by a lot of indestructibility effects. So it's something, but there are board-wide versions of this effect, so it's something to keep in mind. I believe in MH3, there's a version there where it gives -3/-3. So why would you have this and then, have food as an additional upside? Probably pass on this one, but something to keep in mind at least for the limited environment. Up next, we have Scales of Shale, a 3 mana instant where it costs 1 less to cast for each lizard you control. So having 2 lizards, this will only give it 1 black mana. But if you do that, target creature gets +2/+0 and gets indestructible in the turn. So the obligatory black indestructibility battle trick. It also gives lifelink. I missed that word by a long shot. But yeah. Obligatory black battle trick. Unfortunately, you have to pass on this one. This is definitely more for limited, not so much for constructed. Up next, we have Starlit Soothsayer, a 3 mana 2/2. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained or lost life this turn, use surveil 1. Alright, so the bats are definitely more about gaining or losing life. And there's a surprising amount of life gain in this set. Like, holy shit. I've only seen like a small handful of creatures that give life. Yeah, great, gain life here, and then you gain life here, and then this guy is highly likely one of those cards that help support that. And then you just, filter through your deck until you find what you're looking for. The lunar paean is upon us. Let us turn to our ancestors for guidance and look to our children for hope. That's immense pressure to give to your children, but hey, you do you. Soothsayer, you do you. Up next, we have Thornplate Intimidator, a 4-mana 4/3 with offspring, so you can create a 1/1 copy of it. When it enters, target opponent loses 3 life until they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. 4 mana for that kind of effect, unfortunately, is a bit much. I mean, 3 life is honestly nothing. In the grander scheme of things, but when your opponents have a low life total, yeah, this will definitely matter. This will definitely cause a lot of headaches in board stalled limited environments. So you can consider it paying 3 mana more. So this is a 7 mana play all in all, where target opponent could potentially lose 6 life. But otherwise, just pass over this one. Up next, we have Agate Assault, a 3 mana sorcery, where it would either deal 4 damage to target creature, and then if you die, exile it instead, or just exile target artifact. There are 2 mana effects that does what this card does, and it has far more upside than this, unfortunately. So, but it's something to consider, at least for the limited environment. But if there are better options out there, well, I'm not gonna know, because I just give an overview. I'm not exactly a good judge of card quality, unfortunately. Let's move on to the next one. Next, we have Alania's Pathmaker. When it enters, exile the top card of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play that card. A card advantage for the Otter tribal decks. But 4 mana is a bit too much. Just pass on this one. Up next, we have Conduct Electricity, a 5 mana instant where it deals 6 damage to target creature and 2 damage to up to 1 target creature token. Give me a lightning rod, something I can use as a channel. Ral called above the mayhem. Nodding, Phineas drew a copperleaf arrow from his emptying quiver and shot. This is a story spotlight, by the way, and Ral Zarek is here in Bloomburrow fighting something. We're not quite sure what yet, but I'll probably read up on the story involving Ral Zarek and why he's even in Bloomburrow in the first place somewhere down the line. But for this instant, pass on this one. Up next, we have Frilled Spark Shooter, a 4 mana 3/3 with Menace and Reach. That's a combination and a half. It enters with a +1/+1 counter if an opponent lost life this turn. So you can pair this up with the bats. Because a lot of their effects make your opponent lose life, so something to consider. So it becomes a 4 mana 4/4 if that happened. But I'm not quite sure how good it is in constructed. It needs a little bit more setup in order to make it work. But in limited, this is definitely, like, even just at its base, Menace with Reach. It can stonewall a lot of creatures in this format. Given that there are a lot of flyers, yeah, this is definitely good for that in the limited environment. For constructed, probably not. Up next, we have Kindle Spark Duo. So the first duo of red, a 3 mana 1/3, and you tap it, deal 1 damage to target opponent. And then when you ever cast a non-creature spell, you untap the duo. I mean, yeah, another one of these effects for the pinger lovers in Commander. Just cast a non-creature spell and then target opponent. You don't need to. I mean, you don't need to target the whole board. Goddammit, every time, but it's still something. But it only targets opponents, so that gives it a slightly less viability, because a lot of effects that fall under the same umbrella target the whole board and not just one person. Up next, we have Might of the Meek, a 1 mana instant. Target creature gains trample until end of turn. It also gets +1/+0, and if you control a mouse, and then just draw a card. Yeah, 1 mana draw a card is insane. You don't need me to tell you that. 1 mana draw a card, no matter what color you are in, is insane. Hell, black does it, and they get 2 cards for it. But they need to sacrifice a creature, of course, because it's what black does. 1 mana draw 1, that's always insane, but all by itself. This might even go into Feather decks because it's 1 mana give Feather trample, like nothing else. Up next, we have Raccoon Rallier, a 2 mana 2/2, a Grizzly Raccoon, if you could say. And then just tap it, gain haste until end of turn, activate only as a sorcery. Oh, you can't use it as a battle trick, really? I mean, it only makes sense because I used to play only for family only until I realized I could inspire an entire party with a single note. That's literally just every Monster Hunter party ever. If one of your party members enters with a hunting horn, you know for a fact you're going to have a good time because somebody is in the back actually providing support. And I would know because I'm a hunting horn main in Monster Hunter. Yeah, Surprise, surprise. More for commander, unfortunately, but for limited, probably something. But for other 1v1 constructed formats, unfortunately, you're gonna have to pass on this one. Up next, we have Roughshod Duo, the second duo. 3 mana, 3/2, trample. Whenever you expend 4, target creature you control gets +1/+1 against trample until end of turn. So, expend is a rather confusing mechanic at first, but it's actually, it boils down to something like this. So, let's say you cast Roughshod Duo, so that's 3 mana. If you expend your 4th total mana that turn, so let's say you cast, basically, if you cast another spell that meets the expend requirement of one other card, the expend triggers at that point. So let's say if you cast, like, say, Might of the Meek, which will be your 4th mana after you cast Roughshod Duo. By that point, expend will trigger, and then it will do its thing. So yeah, that's basically how expend works. And I mean, it's decent, but you know, I'm just realizing it's hilarious. On God, you inadequate excuse for a foe. Challenge the mouse, and then the raccoon just go. Why are the raccoons like stereotyped into like trash masters? Why? I mean, you can see here, raccoons are more than capable of being smarter than trash pandas, okay? And yeah, hell, they can even wield weapons of war. Come on. But yeah, unfortunately, some raccoons just simply can't escape it. Up next, we have Sansa Cap's Brew, a 2-mana instant, where as additional cost to cast the spell, discard a card. Then target player draws a card. I mean, at the very floor, it's another one of those thrill of possibility style effects. But if you gift your opponent a fish, target creature gets +2/+0. So this could be a pump effect for creatures that need it. But otherwise, you can just use it for its floor, you know. And you can even like gift. Basically, you're going to do 2 additional actions before this spell even resolves. I mean, it's decent. In fact, it's probably maybe even really good. Definitely a decent pick for limited. For constructed, we're gonna wait and see where this card ends up. Up next, we have Steam Path Charger, which is a 2-mana 2/1 with Offspring 2. When this creature dies, deals 1 damage to target player. This is definitely going to see standard play. I can guarantee you guys right freaking now, this will see standard play. There was a creature way back when where if it dies, you deal what it does. Basically, does what this guy does. But this guy comes with an additional body that does the same thing. So I can definitely see this guy seeing standard play somewhere. Red decks are, from what I hear, are on the rise. So we're gonna see where this guy ends up in that environment. Up next, we have Take Out the Trash. I mean, I don't even need to read the rest of the card in order for you to guys know that Take Out the Trash will definitely see some standard play. 2 mana, Lightning Strike almost always sees standard play in some way, shape, or form. But this one has the additional upside of, if you control raccoons, you can just discard it. You can just loot. Or I believe this is Rummage. I'm not quite sure which one is which. I believe loot is draw first and then discard. Yeah, this is Rummaging. Because you discard first and then you draw a card after the fact. But having that additional upside, this card will definitely see play somewhere in the 1v1 formats. It could even, and then in Commander, this will definitely see play in decks that either set up the graveyard or, if you just need to filter through your deck, this is definitely a decent red cantrip to add to your arsenal. Up next, we have War Squeak. I'm reminded of that one viral video of a frog, saying it's bellowing a war cry, and then it's like a squeaky toy. Where you enchant the creature. When it enters, target creature an opponent controls can't block this turn. So, and then target creature gets +1/+1 and has haste. Danger, sharper than thorns, can hide among flowers. Yes. That is amazing flavor text. But yeah, target creature can't block, so this is definitely a way to push damage through. And then target creature gets +1/+1 in haste. So if one of your bigger creatures is given this, I think there are a couple of bigger creatures in this set. Yeah, definitely a way to push damage through and then finish your opponent off. Up next, we have Whisker Quill Scribe. Wow, that is a word and a half. 2 mana 2/2 with Valiant. If it becomes the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, you rummage. Yeah, I mean, it's something, but it's definitely decently statted. At 2 mana 2/2, and then you can just target it for spells. You know, you can pump it with some of the other spells that I've already like talked about. But otherwise, yeah, something to keep in mind for the Boros rats archetype in this, well, rats or mice rather, because I believe rats are Dimir while mice are Boros. So they're like complete polar opposites. Just keep the scribe in mind when you're building your limited deck. Up next, we have Baker's Bane Duo, the first of 2 duos for green. 2 mana 2/2. When it enters, create a food token. Whenever you expend 4, it gets +1/+1 until the end of turn. Decently started. You make a food token. Yeah. Also, expending mana. Oh no, it's only by casting spells. Yeah. So that's another thing with expend. You must cast spells. You can't just activate abilities. So you must cast your spells. Otherwise, this is decent, honestly. Unfortunately, it only triggers once, so at the very most, this only becomes a 3/3. So, probably not. But let's read the flavor text. I'll take the crust, cheated the squirrel, and I'll take the filling, drool the raccoon. Up next, we have Cash Grab. Oh, that's a pun and a half. Mill 4 cards. You may put a permanent card from among the milled cards this way to your hand. If you control a squirrel or return the squirrel to your hand this way, you make a food token. Right then, the first 2 sentences right then and there are already good enough for me. Because I love these kinds of effects in my decks. It's because I love messing around with my graveyard. So there is that. Yeah. Cash Grab, something to look forward to for all commander decks out there. And there is an entire deck in the commander precons that come with this set that have squirrels, and they're gonna wanna have this card. And by the way, if you do intend on buying the squirrel commander deck for that comes with Bloomburrow, just change it to Chatterfang. Chatterfang is in the 99. Everyone and their mother knows that Chatterfang is the best Golgari commander like ever. So just replace that. Just put whoever the face commander is, put that in the 99 and just put Chatterfang right on top of it. So, and then the whole deck is fixed. Up next, we have Druid of the Spade, a 3 mana 2/3. As long as you control a token, it gets +2/+1 and it has trample. So it doesn't say what's kind of token. It just says you need a token. And then it becomes a 4/3. Yeah, it's decently statted at 2/3, so it survives a lot of early combat. It survives a lot of the commonly used removal in Pauper. But it does need a little bit of setup because you need a token for it to gain its additional upside. And not all of the green-based decks, I believe, probably just Golgari Gardens because it creates a 0/1 plant because of Colony Garden. And I mean, that's where it gets its name from anyway. Probably something to keep an eye on, but highly likely will not get anywhere. Up next, we have Heaped Harvest, a 3 mana artifact food. When it enters the battlefield and when you sacrifice, you may search your library for a basic land card, put on a battlefield tap, and then shuffle. And then it has the usual food ability. So end. Okay, so either or, basically. So yeah, you basically get this effect twice. So, and you don't even need to sacrifice it by using its like innate ability. You can just sacrifice it because it's an artifact. There are a lot of There's a lot of artifact sacrifice these days, and I can definitely see Heaped Harvest slotting very, very nicely into Golgari Gardens because they have a lot of sacrifice outlets in that deck. Up next, we have High Stride. Wow, I can't believe it took this long to see the battle trick for green. And it even untaps the creature. Holy shit, why did it take this long? It takes a moment to find your stride, but once you do, you'll feel like a giant. He's walking, oh my god, Briscoe. It's actually really cute. He's walking on stilts as he's traversing the river. That's awesome. But yeah, obligatory green battle trick. Yeah, I mean, it's something. Up next, we have Longstalk Brawl, a sorcery where you gift a fish to your opponent. Choose target creature you control and target creature you don't control. Put a +1/+1 counter on the creature you control if the gift was promised, and then those creatures fight each other. So this will make you this basically removal, and it's at 1 mana, by the way. The 1/1 fish, you can actually just choose that because you gifted your opponent that thing. Because the fish is already there if you gift it. So yeah, you can just fight the fish and then trigger some of your life loss effects and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, it's something to keep in mind for limited. You could, or you could use it for its intended effect, where you can use it to remove an opponent's creature. So yeah, keep it in mind. Up next is Polywallop, a 4 mana instant, costs 1 less to cast for each frog you control. So if you have 3 frogs, this will only cost 1 green mana. Target creature you control deals damage to twice its power to target creature you don't control. So if you manage to reduce it to all the way down to 1 mana, hint, changelings, this is going to cause a lot of hurt to your opponent. We'll see who croaks first. And by the way, a lot of people say that this art is actually a reference to that one Pepe meme where he's like winding his fist back and then about to deliver a punch to you, and this is the aftermath of that. Up next, we have Rush Shield Rampager, a 4-mana 4/4 with Offspring 2. This creature can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. That's a sideboard card if I ever saw one, so mice and rats can't exactly block it because it's a huge ass raccoon. Although, oh my god, even its copy gets the ability. Holy shit. So it will survive a lot of the combat that it would normally wouldn't. So yeah, that's pretty amazing for a 4-mana 4/4. Well, I mean, if you have the spare mana, you can just make it into a 3 + 2 5. Yeah, you can make it a 6-mana 4/4 and then a 1/1. So holy shit. So keep an eye out for this one moving forward. Up next, we have Sticky Tongue Sentinel, a 3-mana 3/3 with Reach. Finally, we have that has Reach creature. But I believe it's understood because it's a Sentinel. Of course, it's going to guard, but then again, not all Sentinels have Reach. So do with that what you will. But when it enters, return up to 1 other target permanent you control to its owner's hand. So this is a way for you to recycle your enter the battlefield triggers. So keep it in mind. There is, again, like I said earlier, there is a Simic Frog in this set, in the higher rarities, that care a lot about creatures entering or leaving the battlefield. Or I believe it's just entering the battlefield at this point. I'm not quite sure. I'll have to reread the card again. So this is something to keep in mind for that draft archetype. Up next, we have Sunshower Druid. When it enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, you gain 1 life. I mean, yeah, this is pretty goddamn decent. For a 0/2, 1-mana 0/2, I mean, yeah, it stonewalls a lot of early offense, and it even makes one of your creatures slightly bigger. So something to keep in mind for the frog archetype. I mean, we're already getting like a lot of frogs, surprisingly, in the set. So we can finally make a frog tribal deck with the Gitrog monster, finally. We'll see how far that deck goes. Up next, we have 3/3. Oh my god, this is going to trip me up so hard. 3/3 Root Weaver, a 2-mana 1/3, obligatory 2-mana 1-mana dork for the set. And it's a mole even. So the 3/3 city, I believe, is a rare land. And that card is insane because it's a Gaia's Cradle. It's a tribal Gaia's Cradle. Like, I'm pretty sure that card will see a lot of play in tribal decks moving forward. Because, good God, I do not see that card, like, being cheap, ever. Because of what it does. It's literally Gaia's Cradle. Just look up the card. It's literally just Gaia's Cradle. Of course, well, not really Gaia's Cradle, but more like Nykthos for tribal decks, which is also just a variant of Gaia's Cradle. Up next, we have Tree-Guard Duo, which is a 4-mana 3/4. So the second green duo, when it enters until end of turn, target creature you control gains Vigilance and gets +X/+X, where X is the number of creatures you control. So this is definitely the finisher for your green-based decks in Limited. But for Constructed, unfortunately, there are better ways to go about it. Up next, we have Treetop Sentries, a 4-mana 2/4. When it enters, you may forage. If you do, draw a card. So to forage, exile 3 cards from your graveyard or sacrifice a food. I mean, you'd rather sacrifice food, right? Food production is actually very plentiful in the set, especially at higher rarities. So this card will not exactly be lost on you. especially when it comes to sacrificing food tokens. But if you don't have any food tokens, you unfortunately have to exile 3 cards from your graveyard, which is not exactly a heavy cost, but sometimes you exile cards that you would recur later, especially if your deck is built around that. But otherwise, yeah. 3 mana, 2/4 reach, stonewalls a lot of offense, and then your opponent has to use actual removal on it. Up next, Cindering Cutthroat, a 3 mana, 3/2. When it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on if an opponent lost life this turn, and then it gains menace for hybrid Rakdos. Yeah, I mean it's a very very decent attacker at the very least. Especially if you have the spare mana to give it menace, but otherwise, probably not for constructed, sadly. Up next, we have Corpseberry Cultivator, a Golgari Squirrel Warlock. At the beginning of combat on your turn, use Forage. And then whenever you forage, you make it slightly bigger. Now, you probably will not have enough food tokens to keep this guy getting bigger over time, unfortunately. So you might end up having to exile cards from your graveyard at that point. And then you run out of cards from your graveyard, you can no longer make him bigger. But thankfully and mercifully, Forage is a May. Same with 3-top sentries over here. Forage is a May, so you may choose not to do it. But otherwise, keep an eye out for this guy. This guy might see play going forward. Up next, we have Head of the Homestead, a 5 mana 3/2. When it enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1s. There is another creature that came out of a Modern Horizons set, but that thing has evokes, and I believe it costs 4 mana to evoke it in order to create 2 1/1s. This is that creature, but it stays on the battlefield, and I believe the evoke creature costs 6 on its face. This one costs 5, so you're getting like 5 power worth of creatures spread across 3 bodies. That kind of effect does indeed see play, and with Ephemerate being on the rise yet again, I can definitely see this card seeing play somewhere in that deck, but 5 mana might be a little too much for that deck. Unless, of course, they find a way to, stonewall the game long enough for the opponent to die to a bunch of bunny rabbits. Up next, we have Junk Blade Bruiser, a Golgari, a 5 mana, not Golgari, a 5 mana Gruul Raccoon Berserker. Whatever you expend for, this guy gets +2/+1. So same with the other expend cards, you have to spend a 4th piece of mana because in order for it to become even bigger. By itself, honestly, 5 mana 4/5 with trample is already decent. So yeah, even without the expend, this is already like a very decent attacker all by itself, honestly. But probably not see play in constructed, sadly. Up next, we have Mind Drill Assailant, a 4 mana 2/5 with Threshold. As long as there are 7 more cards in graveyard, this guy gets +3/+0, and it has Surveil 1. Hey! A little expensive at 4 mana, sadly. If this were only 3 mana, it would probably be way too good. But otherwise, it does get bigger, especially once you hit the threshold. But otherwise, you're only really using this for the surveillability. And then this guy, again, if it were 3 mana, I would probably be more accepting of it in commander formats. But for the budget-minded, this is definitely something to keep in mind. Up next, we have Moonrise Cleric, a 3 mana 2/3 with flying. And then whenever it attacks, gain 1 life. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the bat archetype in the limited environment involves a lot of gaining life and then your opponent losing life. So this is definitely support for that archetype, for that draft archetype. Yeah, keep it in mind for limited, but for constructed, probably not. Up next, we have Pawn Prophet, which is a card that a lot of people are excited for because it's just 2 mana draw 1. That you can even ignore everything else. It's just 2 mana draw 1, and then you can return it to the battle. You can return it to your hand by using like Stick Tongue Sentinel here, and then you can just draw 2 cards yet again. Or you can lure your opponent to a false sense of security by leaving the 2 blue mana up, and then just using counterspell instead. So yeah, definitely will be constructed playable somewhere. Maybe in standard, maybe in Pauper, who knows? But I will definitely see this guy being cooked in a lab somewhere. Up next, we have Seed Pod Squire, which is a 4 mana 3/3 with flying. Whenever it attacks, target creature control without flying gains +1/+1 on the end turn. So, a way to push through damage in limited, but otherwise, probably not for constructed. Up next, we have Tempest Angler, a 3 mana 2/2. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. What the fuck? So that is just permanent prowess. Oh my god. I'm just realizing that Kiln Feed might have some stiffer competition here. Oh my god, because the buff is permanent, and you just need to like cast a lot of non-creature spells in order for this guy to like hit for lethal amounts of damage. Just get this guy to like 10 power, and then boom, he'll probably be already dead. But then again, a lot of the stuff that actually makes no. You can probably only get it to like 3+1/+1 counters to get it to become a 5/5, and then target this guy with a lot of spells that give like temporary buffs, and I think at the minimum it should be like +2, and then give it double strike. Then somebody is definitely going to die. Unfortunately, it doesn't have like a lot of protection. But then again, you're not exactly hoping for protection with this guy around in the first place. You're just there to hit hard and hopefully win right then and there. Up next, we have Veteran Guardmouse, a 4 mana 3/4 with Valiant. When you trigger Valiant, it gets +1/+0 and gains first strike until end turn. And you even scry 1. Hey! It's decent, but at 4 mana, a little too expensive for me, unfortunately. Up next, we have Bark Form Harvester, which is a shapes. Oh, finally got a changeling. So this guy can go into any of the draft archetypes here because it's a changeling. And then put target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. So yeah, this will rescue your cards from exile-based effects. Like extremely commonplace in Commander. And finally, I think this is the winner for This Creature Has Reach award. But 3 mana 2/3, yeah, it's pretty decent. And hell, the ability is even a mana sink. So you don't even need to tap it, and you can just sit there, or rather stand there, stonewalling all of your opponent's offense until it probably dies to removal. Up next, we have Bumbleflower Sharepot, a 2 mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield, you create a food token, and then you sacrifice it to destroy non-target. What the fuck? What the fuck? Oh my god. But yeah, you do need 5 mana for it, but it does say destroy target non-land permanent. So this will give the colorless decks a decent source of like generic removal, which is insane, by the way. I can definitely see Tron players like salivating over this card because it just says destroy target non-land. I mean, who cares if you can only activate it as a sorcery? So I will definitely see this card seeing play in a Tron deck somewhere because, good God, destroying a non-land permanent is way better than just destroying a specific type of target. Up next, we have Fountain Port Bell, a 1 mana artifact. When it enters, you may search your library for basic land card, and then you put it on top, and then you sacrifice the bell in order to draw 1 card. So, assuming you have 2 mana, you can just basically search your library for a basic land card. It's just extremely. It's not rampant growth because it doesn't put it in the field. I'm not quite sure what card searches for a basic land and then it puts it into your hand rather than into the field. I don't quite remember, because I don't exactly play those kinds of cards in Commander. But this is definitely a colorless way to, quote-unquote ramp yourself, or at the very least, fix your colors if you're budget-minded. So keep this in mind going forward. Finally, we have 3/3 Mascot, 2 mana 2/1 Changeling. So we have 2 Changelings in here. And yeah, that's it. Add 1 mana of any color, activate only once each turn. You're not even gonna mind that. You're there for the changeling, so that you will fit into every other tribe that is in this draft archetype. And finally, the 2 lands here, we have Uncharted Haven and Hidden Grotto. Hidden Grotto was already a card that I believe... No, this is a Surveil one. Yeah, the other card was Scry one. And then it's also a filter. Then Uncharted Haven, choose a color. So this is only a monocolor color fixer. So something to keep in mind, because it's not going to fix your 2 colors unlike the Thriving Lands. So, and then I believe here are 3 cards that are reprinted for this set. Charm Sleep, Thieving Otter, Giant Growth, and Rabid Bite. Sadly, none for the red cards. Oh, there's Flame Lash. No white cards. Surprising. But yeah, and then we have the Oh, we only have Swiftwater Cliffs and Blossoming Sands. Interesting. The others are probably in like higher rarities. But yeah, so that is it. I am honestly excited for this set. Again, it's more personal bias than actual competitive viability because I love Mouse Guard. I love the Mouse Guard growing up, and the entire theme and tone of this set really reminds me of Mouse Guard. Granted, Mouse Guard is a lot darker than what Bloomburrow seems to be like on the surface, but given that they have Calamity Beasts and all that, the story of Bloomburrow might be just as dark as Mouse Guard. So there are a couple of key players that we will highly likely see and being experimented on, like say Carrot Cake here, or hell, even Dazzling Denial might even see play somewhere. Shore Up is a decent ass reprint. Dire Sight, maybe even. What else are we gonna see here? Saxicap's Brew will definitely see play somewhere. Take Out the Trash will definitely see play in non-rotating formats. So will War Squeak, especially for Pauper because +1/+1 in haste. Like there are already cards in Pauper that do that, so this might just slot into those kinds of decks. Heaped Harvest will definitely see play somewhere. Poliwallop also probably. Then Rush Shield Rampager is something more I'm personally going to keep an eye on, especially if it will see play somewhere. I'll just probably check MTG Top 8 for more reliable tournament reportings. What else? Yeah, Pawn Prophet will also see will also definitely see play somewhere. But yeah, those are all the cards that and that are at the common slot in Bloomburrow. And again, this set, some people honestly don't like it because it supposedly took the slot that the revisit to Lorwyn is going to be in. But my defense to that is, well, this is a way for Magic players to get their non-Magic playing partners to finally play the game because it features a lot of cute little guys fighting against predators. Like, what more inspiration do you want? You want rabbits, you want rats, you want mice, you want birds even. This deck has it in spades. And a lot of the legendary creatures here are two colors, so this is like pseudo Ravnica, where a lot of the really good stuff are like trapped behind two colors, so it's not too hard to fix your colors for the commander decks of your choice that are going to come out of this set. And yeah, so that will be it for Bloomburrow. If you guys like what you saw, hit like, comment, subscribe, and share this among your friends. And until next time, toodles.